So the kind of the brief highlights I want to talk to you guys about tonight is I call it nutrition in the real world, and and how we kind of combat kind of slips. It's not a matter if you're going to make a slip; it's a matter what you do when you make a slip. And the first thing is this, to really understand that really willpower is really a lousy strategy if you're going to rely on willpower. And so the example I use is really controlling your environment, and so it's you can invoke less willpower at the grocery store and decide not to buy that box of cookies than to say I'm going to only have a cookie every other day at home and then to buy a box of cookies. So when you're looking at willpower, it's more strategic that it can work temporarily, but if you're setting yourself up for long-term trials of willpower, you probably won't be successful. And so, they use the concept of when you're grocery shopping is when you can really have the true power of your willpower can be impactful by making those quick decisions to move on from those things you shouldn't have. And we always reinforce sugar is the enemy. A lot of times we're told fats and things like that are really bad for us, and really there's certain types of fats that are less healthy, but the reality of it is sugar is the culprit that we need to really try to stay from. So also reading the labels, if you eat anything that's processed, to make sure you're making a note of the labels because there's sugar probably hidden in it. That's even in your processed meats. Because remember, the food manufacturers, they want to make it very palatable and makes it want you to eat more of it. And that's how they do it, is adding sugar. So, really, making sure that when you go shopping, you don't go shopping hungry. Make sure that you evoke your willpower there by not buying things. Don't test yourself by buying something and say, I'll just use my willpower at home. Because they kind of talked about it as constant willpower versus spikes of willpower. And the spiked willpower is something that is pretty useful. And that's those brief moments in time where you use it to overcome it, to not set yourself up. Another example would be like at a restaurant, when they bring the bread, just ask them to take the bread away. So you don't have to sit there and stare at bread the whole time. Because again, the bread's going to be something that's going to really stimulate your appetite, and you're going to eat a lot more. Now, along those lines, though, is also uh, being proactive in planning your meals. The worst thing you can do is that conversation about, what do you want to eat tonight, especially when you're tired and had a long day, because usually that's going to be a default to something that's not as healthy for you. So if you can plan your meals, that's really, really important, to have a good meal plan and then sticking to a meal plan. Now, after the call, I'll send you some links. One's called abstainer versus moderator. And so some people, it's important. What this is it's a little quiz you take to decide. It helps you decide if you're what's called an abstainer versus a moderator. And what that means is some people do cheat meals, meaning they give themselves permission like once a week to eat whatever they want. And people that are successful in doing that are called moderators, meaning that they have the ability to periodically cheat and it doesn't derail them. But a lot of times people are abstainers, meaning that cheat meal turns into a vicious cycle. And so kind of knowing your personality helps kind of gauge that everyone's individual in the sense of cheat meals. I hear people say all the time that cheat meals work for themselves, but I also know lots of people that the cheat meal is the start of something bad. And then along those lines is kind of, are you a people pleaser? And this will be another link that's kind of a little bit of kind of a personality inventory, and they only take a few minutes to do, but it's kind of how you interact with the world, meaning, like I'm what's called an obliger. I want to please people. Now that's the biggest group in society too. So you're always doing things to please people. And in doing that, we often forget to take care of ourselves because we're always trying to take care of others. And so it's really good to kind of have that knowledge on kind of how your mental aspect goes. So some special situations, let's say you have that meal that you know is not the right meal and it's bad for you, and and the important thing is to not beat yourself up about it, but then make sure it's not a continuous process. And what I mean by that is, if you have a bad day, make sure you have a good day the next day. Don't let a pattern develop. So you eat poorly one day, make sure you don't do it the next day, because then you start to develop a pattern. That applies with your exercise or fitness too. If you miss a workout, that's okay. You know, don't let that be something that derails you, but then don't miss the next one. So that's really, really important. But understanding if you're an abstainer or moderator will also help uh, kind of reinforce that. Now, when you go out to restaurants, because again, we want to be able to do this and be sustainable. And the fact is, we dine out a lot in our society. So it goes back to don't eat carbs first. So avoid the bread if possible. That nice fresh bread they bring you, that's very intentional. So either avoid it altogether and ask them not to bring it, or ask them to bring it towards the end. And so we want you to start with vegetables, followed by your proteins and fats, and then your carbs, your breads, your starches, things like that. Also, alcohol makes you make bad decisions. So try to avoid alcohol as much as possible. And in addition to that, don't be afraid to ask the servers to modify your order. So things like you want the dressing on the side or things like that. Now, often people are kind of embarrassed to do this, but people have like celiac disease or gluten allergies or something that they're very in tune to not be afraid to ask for modifications to the meal, because there's quite a high significant impact on their life when they eat something like that. It's no different than someone that's allergic to peanuts saying, make sure there's no peanuts in my whatever. So don't be afraid if you're at a restaurant to do things like that. Ask them to hold the bread, ask them to put your salad dressing on the side so you can kind of control that better. Now, another big time when we're going into this season is holidays. I think the biggest thing to I want people to remember is it's less important what you eat between Christmas and New Year's than what you eat between New Year's and Christmas, because during the holidays you're going to have some reasons to kind of splurge, I guess is what I would say. So don't let that be something that derails you. It's okay to let yourself enjoy the holidays. But then another thing is you don't want a fridge full of those yummy leftovers after the holidays, because that's going to be a real challenge. So, but one thing that I recommend is enjoy the Thanksgiving dinner, but then make sure the leftovers are getting handed off to guests, so that pies and things like that are not going to sit there and test you. Because I know for myself that goes back to the willpower, and I love pumpkin pie, and so if I see a pumpkin pie, I'm gonna eat the whole pumpkin pie. So I enjoy a piece of pumpkin pie, and then there's lots of leftovers going with other people out the door, so that I'm not gonna really be uh, faced with that over and over again. And then in addition to that, I'm gonna include a link that's for a blog that also talks about kind of the approach to the holidays, and how you can kind of plan, because this is where people can really get themselves derailed. I count uh, Halloween as one of these derailed holidays, because while we don't sit around and enjoy a big dinner, there's tons of candy and available. So kind of moving through now till the end of the year, we're going to be faced with challenges, and understanding that you're going to have slips. But the important thing is don't beat yourself up about it. Don't let that slip derail you. Okay. But really, step back, say, yep, I did it. Now I'm going to correct. I'm going to do the right thing the next time. And then don't surround yourself with constant, battle of trying to hold yourself back from eating things. And don't be afraid to tell the people in your environment that, look, I'd appreciate, not bringing these things. This time of year, you also have a lot of work parties. The people tend to bring in lots of food. And don't be afraid to say, hey, I'm really trying to, be healthier in my eating, and I appreciate, if you wouldn't constantly torment me with these items, because it's at the end of the day your health that we're looking for. Now, so that's just brief stuff, kind of how to approach kind of this season. But I also want to talk to you a little bit different about what's called time restricted eating and caloric restriction. Now, when people want to lose weight, they usually do what's called caloric restriction, where they just reduce the number of calories. And that's really a bad idea because it invokes a lot of hormonal changes, specifically cortisol. Because if you're in a state of starvation long term, your cortisol levels go up, which basically is going to stimulate you to want to eat more and stimulate your appetite, but also put your body in a state of kind of hibernation, if you would, meaning that you're going to burn less fat. So it's actually harder to lose weight. And so if you want to do something, I recommend time restricted eating, and I want to explain the difference. So time restricted eating means periods of fasting, but it's followed by periods of eating. So you may actually eat they've looked at this, and they put people on caloric restricted diets and time restricted eating. And both groups got the same amount of calories per day, but the time restricted eating basically ate 1 or 2 full meals in their eating window. And what that means is it's kind of defined as going a minimum of 12 hours without eating. Now, depending on kind of your normal habits on how you eat, this would be something that you may need to break into slowly. That sometimes people, if they start this, have a lot of problems with dizziness and just not feeling well at all, and need small little bit of something, and can't go a full 12 hours with no food. And what I mean by this is restriction of calories, not water. So during this time period, people can drink water. You can drink unsweetened tea, black coffee. But when you do this, they've done studies on this, and the people that do the time restricted eating, they actually develop more muscle mass, and it actually causes a couple other things to happen depending on how long your fast is. But the first definition is your health benefits really require about 12 hours of fasting. So a lot of people, what they do is they break their fast. Their breakfast or break fast actually starts at noon, because they already have 8 hours of sleeping in, so they're asleep during the majority of that fasting period. And so this is called the 16-8 time restricted model, meaning that you basically fast for 16 hours and then you eat during an 8-hour period. And what this is going to do is basically it really starts to affect the hormones in your body, and it affects them in a good way. So the first thing that happens is your body converts from glucose metabolism to fat metabolism. So you actually start burning fat. So you're helping alleviate, if you want to lose weight, you're burning the right things. Now, some people do prolonged fast. So and this is not meant to be a complete course in different types of fasting, but as you lengthen the fast, there's different physiological things that happen. So after about a 24-hour fast, something called autophagy starts. And what that is your body is kind of saying, well, we might be in a state of starvation now for a period of time, so we got to clean the house. And so what your body starts to do is any of the kind of at the cellular level, cells that are not optimal, the body actually digests them and starts to use the cell products to rebuild. And so it's actually cleaning up. And this is actually something that they actually currently are looking at in the treatment of cancer by instituting a fast with the chemotherapy, because cancer cells are malfunctioning cells, and they are susceptible to this. And so after about 24 hours of a fast, we start to see this, where the body goes into a state of kind of cleaning house, and really promoting kind of getting rid of the cells that are not performing as well as they should, and then using the kind of the byproduct of the cell to regenerate and support the good healthy cells. Then at about 48 hours, you have certain hormones that are really affected, one of them being insulin. here your insulin level is probably going to be as low as it can go. So remember, whenever you have high insulin, that's a fat storing uh, uh, hormone. So it's wanting you to put on weight. So after about 48 hours, you now switched into a ketone kind of, they call it ketosis, but you're not truly in ketosis, but your body is now using ketones or the breakdown of fat. In addition to that, though, as the insulin level approaches zero, your testosterone levels start to rise. That also promotes muscle growth and bone density growth. So it's almost like your body is now getting kind of prepared for battle, but it's also getting prepared for that next big meal, because that's also another big impact is when you break the fast, you don't want to break the fast with a bunch of sugary stuff. You want good, excuse me, good high quality proteins and healthy fats, because your body then is in a state where it automatically will start, instead of packaging that as fat and storing it, it now puts it into muscle growth and improving bone density. And then that's 72 hours. Now, some people will do fast up to a week long, and I'm not saying run out and start that. I've done week long fast, and that's something you got to work into, especially depending on, if you follow the adage of 5 small meals a day, you're going to have to take some time if you want to try this, and because you're going to probably not feel well going 12 hours without eating anything. So you kind of got to build up. Maybe start at 7 hours, then 8 hours the next day, kind of build up to it. But at 72 hours, that's when they really see a significant improvement in your immune system. That's where kind of the cells that have been getting cleaned up are now all out of the way, and your immune system is greatly improved at this point. And if you think about it, this is how we kind of historically, thousands of years ago, we didn't have, McDonald's and Hardee's on every corner. So we never knew where our next meal was coming from. And so we always were in kind of a point of kind of feast or famine, meaning that you had to go through periods of starvation. And that's really kind of what the body's designed to do, is to kind of have these periods of kind of rest and let the body kind of heal itself. And then when you move back into eating, really eating the healthy things. So, I think that I do intermittent fasting, and I've done it for quite a while. I find it easy now to go that 16 hours. Often I do one meal a day, just because I'm not overly hungry. Um, but when I do the prolonged fast, which I do periodically, one or two times a year, where I'll fast for 7 days. It's kind of an interesting thing because, I'll tell Tanya that if I could feel this good all the time, I wouldn't eat ever if I didn't need to, because it's pretty amazing when you hit about that 5th day, the how you feel, because it only reinforces the importance of nutrition, because we often don't feel well, and it's because of the things we're eating and we don't know that. And that's also why the detox part is so important, is the learning what different how each individual responds to different food items. But these are just some kind of down and dirty, kind of helping us get ready for the holidays, because this is the time of year I always worry about everyone, because it gets real challenging this time of year. We get real busy, so our fitness kind of starts to fall off, and then we're just surrounded with this surplus of less than ideal foods that we're just constantly being exposed to. So I'd encourage you to do the best you can to control your environment, but understand you're probably going to have some slips, but don't let the slips derail you. Okay.